All right. Hello, everyone. My name is Chris Horner. I am a cybersecurity engineer with the local consultancy Triaxiom Security, which we are now a part of Strata Information Group, and very happy about that. Today, my talk is on the oldest trick in the book is still the best trick in the book. And what is the oldest trick in the book? It's social engineering. So in this presentation, we're going to cover three main things. First, we're going to look at the psychology behind social engineering. Why do even very smart people fall for social engineering? Then how we as cybersecurity practitioners create a professional test for our clients. Professional, not a canned one, not a generic one, not just a checkbox, but something that can help our clients be able to prepare for and defend against social engineering attempts. That in turn helps everybody at the company learn how to recognize and avoid these attacks even in their personal life. So let's start by defining social engineering. Social engineering is using deception to manipulate a person into taking an action that they shouldn't, or to reveal some kind of confidential information. Sometimes this is referred to as social hacking. This is not a new attack vector. In fact, it's old as time. We all heard the story about the Trojan horse thousands of years ago. So deceit and trickery have always been a part of the human experience, unfortunately. But it's only been in the last couple of decades that this tactic has actually been given a name. So while technology continues to improve and become new apps, new technology stacks are always coming out, human psychology, though, is generally the same. And people will tend to operate in the same way and in a predictable fashion. And that is why social engineering is actually so dangerous. These days, technical controls, as long as they're set up correctly, are generally pretty good. But why should an attacker go through all the trouble of identifying and defeating technology when all you have to do is get somebody to open the gates for you from the inside? So the Verizon data breach report that came out this year, the latest one, showed that 74% of attacks incorporated some kind of social engineering element. And this is a really interesting time to be giving this presentation and to have been polishing it off, because if you've been paying attention to the news, there was a very high-profile hack in Las Vegas, and the details are still coming out as of this presentation. But the group that is claiming responsibility for this attack said they social engineered the help desk by using a phone call. And I will tell you, as somebody who does social engineering campaigns, that is a very credible possibility. Even with technical controls in place, it is possible to do that. I know because I've done it. So when you're looking at social engineering, there are typically four kinds of attacks that could take place. One is phishing, emails, texts, and phone calls. We're probably all familiar with those. Then there's pretexting. That's pretending to be somebody else to uncover secret information. Now, phishing and pretexting would take up the majority of attacks that you see and hear about. Then there's baiting. That's exploiting somebody's curiosity. That could be dropping USB drives around a building, for example, hoping somebody picks one up and plugs it into the computer to see what's on it, just out of curiosity. Or the promise to reveal something secret to somebody. And then finally, quid pro quo. That is offering something to somebody with the goal of getting something back to you in return. So no matter which attack vector social engineering takes, it usually plays on one of these four things with people: fear, trust, curiosity, and greed. Now, fear, that can play on the fear of missing out, FOMO. It could also play on their fear of facing repercussions. We see this a lot in phishing emails, don't we? We've all gotten them. The ones that say, we're going to deduct $47 million out of your bank account. If this was a mistake, just call this number, give us your bank information, we'll fix it. Or we're having trouble delivering the package that you drunk ordered the other night on Amazon. Just give us your Amazon account and we'll reroute it for you. Or we can't verify your Netflix payment, so you can't finish Formula One Drive to Survive this weekend. Sorry, but call us and give us the credit card information. We'll make sure that you get your access back. Then they can also play on people's trust. In general, people want to be helpful. Now, this is even more so at companies if their role is service-based. Curiosity, we mentioned, it could be the offer to get early access to something or be the first to get some kind of a limited edition thing. Anything that incentivizes them to listen more. And then finally, greed. that could be offer of a gift card or some other incentive, monetary or not, for them to take an action that the attacker is looking for. Human brains actually operate very much like a computer. Brains take in input, they analyze it, it triggers a response, which is then manifested in an outward action. Now, scientists that have studied the brain also know that there is something simmering underneath the surface as well all the time, and that's our subconscious. That's a part of our minds that integrates ideas together. What these studies show is that subconscious thoughts actually happen first, and then your conscious mind needs time to catch up. So if something is out of place or dangerous sense, then the conscious mind is activated for more evaluation. And oftentimes we call this a gut feeling. How we relate this to social engineering tests are, if the details are wrong in the test, the game is up before it ever begins and the test doesn't help anybody. Thing is, the converse of that is also true. If the details are right, it can trigger a subconscious response before your target even knows what's happening. And the very best social engineers are excellent at intercepting this process and triggering that automatic response. Secondly, the other way that humans, of course, are different from computers is that humans run on emotions. And emotional responses can override logic, even when somebody knows better. We've all done it, right? Haven't we all done something that we look back and like, boy, I knew I shouldn't have done that, or I wish I hadn't done that. Computers don't have that problem. Computers run on logic. Human beings do not. So again, the best social engineers excel at generating an emotional response from their targets, because even when there's doubt, that can be overridden. So with all that in mind, let's look at how we create a professional social engineering campaign. Emphasis on professional. The difference between a professional test and a canned or generic one is that the test should be thorough, and the ultimate goal is that the recipients reinforce and test their own security mindset and procedures. It's a practice drill. The military runs practice drills. They're not flying their fighter jet for the first time in combat. Athletes run practice drills so they know what to do at the event. My kid's school runs lockdown practice drills. And why do people do this? Well, it's because when crunch time comes, people will already know what to do. The response will already be ingrained within them. So a professional test helps an organization baseline their employee defense as well as their technical defense, because remember, security is not just one thing. And it also gives direction for them on where to focus for improvements. So start with the overall objective. What is the objective that the client wants? Do they want to see if you can capture credentials? Is it getting remote access to their system? Is it physical access to a secure building? I like to start with that and work backwards. Then you look at what tools do you have at your disposal? What are you scoped for in your ROE? And then remember, the details matter. And a proper campaign takes a lot of preparation. I mean, a lot. As a matter of fact, the more time you spend preparing, the more successful you will be. And that's why genuine red team engagements go on for months. So if you're familiar with a technical pen test, and if you've taken any of the major certifications, PMPT and OSCP especially, you've heard the word enumerate until your ears bleed. But enumeration is the key to a successful pen test, because it's through enumeration and seeing what's going on, that's how you get the lay of the land. It allows you to build a holistic picture of what you're dealing with before you ever attack. And these same principles actually apply to a social engineering test. So on a technical test, you can have things like Nmap scans, website directory scans, manually looking at web pages. Hopefully you're taking notes of what you're seeing, right? Now, once you get all of that information, you can paint yourself a picture of how everything fits together, and this is key, in the context of their business. Every business, every industry is different. You don't have to be an expert on how all of those work, but you should at least understand the basics and understand how their business operates. Now, for a social engineering test, you're less reliant on technical tools, but you're more reliant on OSINT, open source intelligence gathering. These are free resources, no hacking is required to get them, but you do have to know how to look for the information. So to start with that, you can look at things like their main website. What messaging or keywords do you see over and over? Can you find an organization chart? Can you find the email address format? Are they using first name dot last name or first initial last name, for example? That detail becomes important later. Social media, of course, is a gold mine for OSINT, both for the company and on individual targets. Scroll through it. What are they talking about? What are their concerns? Who do they interact with? What other companies do they interact with? Going through LinkedIn especially, you can learn job titles, the main functions of the business. You can also learn their lingo. Do they have a help desk or a service desk? Again, that detail matters and becomes important later. Are the employees geographically central or are they spread out? That can tell you if you're working with a remote organization or one that could work in office. Might also clue you into how quick they can communicate once you start attacking. And then what are newsworthy topics in their industry? Are there mergers? Are the new advances rolling out? And then online documents. Companies sometimes will post studies. They'll have PDF documents out there, but look at the metadata for those. Who wrote it? What software did they use? Was it Mac-based or Windows-based? Again, that detail can matter. Tools like Power Meta can scrape for this, and Google Docs can be used to find documents, and sometimes documents you wouldn't even believe are out there. So once you start taking these notes, you'll start percolating an idea. And again, just like in a technical pen test, once you find a new server or gain user access, you begin the enumeration process all over again. The difference is this time it's just more targeted. From there, you can start trying to figure out who are their vendors. Google is good for that. I've even done things like an image search on our client's logo. One time I found the client's logo that went back to an HR software company, which seemed weird, right? Why would it be there? Well, our client had written a testimonial about how much they loved the HR software. Guess what the social engineering campaign became? Tools like AMAS or the Harvester, they can help you pinpoint some of the tech stack that's in use. Do they have URLs for a CRM or VPN? Which one is it? Sometimes all you have to do is call and ask. If I notice a company that doesn't have any tech roles on LinkedIn, that's a clue they're probably using an MSP. So one of the tactics I use is I spoof the number to an MSP that's in their region, and I call and I pretend I'm a business development representative. Hey, we're your neighbor over here. Just wondering if you farm out any IT services. Oh, yeah, we do. Oh, okay, great. Do you mind if I ask who you use? They'll tell me. That's awesome. Thank you. Is there someplace I could send information about some of our services? Typical innocent phone call, but now I've got a really good piece of information. I've even done that for internal phone numbers. I've spoofed a new employee, called a HR number internal, for example, that turned up on OSINT. Hey, I'm new. I've locked myself out. I know this isn't the right department. Can you please tell me how to reach the help desk? Bam, then you have the help desk phone number. Sometimes I've even found internal intranets open to the wide open internet. There was one client, their intranet was behind a username and password, but for some reason, a lot of it was exposed publicly. And so I told them, of course, that so they could close it up after I plundered everything out of it. But once you ID some of these vendors, look at their login pages. What colors and fonts do they use? What can you mimic? How are the fields labeled? What disclaimers appear on these pages? I'm not a great coder. I'm really not that good at writing code from scratch, but you know what I am good at? Copy and paste. I know how to copy and paste color codes. I know how to copy and paste font types. I know how to copy and paste logos and disclaimers. Then also look at what matters in their industry. Is there certain compliance requirements that people in industry have to adhere to? HIPAA and medical, for example, or certifications. Do employees in that field have to obtain certain certifications? And then what organizations or causes does the company support? Are they active in their community? Are they proud of some of those achievements? See, all of this stuff is stuff that can be copied and mimicked because remember, you want their subconscious to think that everything is familiar and comfortable, or to put it another way, it's normal and safe. So with those notes, you probably have an idea for a campaign at this point, and now it's time to pick a URL that you will use as the starting domain for your campaign. I like to use misspellings, flip-flop letters, or adding words or numbers to things. So like companyname.com, for example, that could be the client. I'll buy the domain companynamehr.com. And you'd be surprised how cheap you can do this. I've never spent more than $20 for a domain, and usually I don't spend more than 12. But even some very high profile company names, just adding IT or HR to the end of it can be a very easy path to getting a start on your campaign. Now, these are examples of some login pages that we've used in social engineering campaigns that we've conducted. The one on the left here, blue, the one in blue, this is the same graphic that was used in the company's background on their login page. There's a phone company logo down there because there was a news article that they had been bought out and there was a merger going on. Employees of that company would have known that. And then the one on the right, the red one, AssetWorks, that's a real Salesforce app. It's used for fleet management. Through OSINT, I discovered our client used that. So I copied the color, I copied the logo, I copied the letter coloring, and the copyright notice at the bottom. This would have been a login page that looked very familiar to recipients of that company. Last one, this is the one that I also copied the font type. I copied the disclaimer from a real login page that they had. I copied the company logo. Now this particular company, their name was made up of 3 words in the URL. And I bought the exact same name, but in one of the words, I flip-flopped the A and the E. And again, it's going to pass a very quick cursory inspection. You had to look really close to see that it wasn't the same one, but that domain was $12. So now it's time to craft the message. And remember the 4 things we talked about that social engineering attacks tend to prey on: fear, trust, curiosity, and greed. Whichever of those that you choose to use, the bottom line is to have quality communication. Remember, people are people. They're busy. You're busy. I'm busy. We're all just trying to get through the day, and we'll typically decide very quickly how to deal with what's in front of you, right? People also feel good when they've accomplished a task. So if you give them something and then it's done, you get out of their hair, it makes people feel good. So things you can do: install artificial time constraints. When you're talking to somebody, hey, look, this is only going to take a second. I'm only going to take 1 minute of your time today, I promise. Or in the email message, this absolutely has to be done by week's end. In the subject line, put action required, trying to bump it to the top of their priority list. Sympathy also works. Oh God, I sure hope you can help me. You know, it has just been one of those days. Do you have a real quick second just to give me a hand? People generally will. Quid pro quo. If you do this for me, I'll do this for you in return. And ego. This really works with phone calls and in-person physical pen testing. This is where you get somebody to like you by liking them first, AKA charm. People's pride will come into play too. If you can get them to agree to a series of smaller commitments to say yes to easier questions and work your way up to what you actually want, people are a lot more hesitant to backtrack on a road that they've already gone down. And again, social engineering attackers will utilize those same tactics. Remember that details matter. Every detail you put in your campaign either adds up or takes away from the effectiveness. So match their email address format like we talked about before. How are they using it? What is the name? Is it first name dot last name, first initial, last name? However it is, that's what you're going to copy. Use the correct lingo. We talked before, help desk versus service desk. Make it believable. Bonus points if you can get the email signature. And I know if it's our client, it's easy enough just to copy it out of their emails, but think like an attacker. Go a little farther. I found success by getting this, by emailing the sales department, for example, and pretending I'm interested in what they're offering. I get an email back. What does it have in it? The corporate signature. Then you can copy it. If I'm sending out phishing emails, I also watch for out-of-office bounce backs because, again, a lot of times those will have the corporate signature in there too. And when you get these details right, I have found success, and I can tell this from the out-of-office bounce back when the client's email system is telling the recipient, this is from an external source, use caution, do not click on things in here, do not provide information, and yet it happens anyway. This one is an example of an email that we sent out. Matter of fact, it goes with that blue screen example we looked at a couple slides ago. The phone system provider Vocera was purchased by Stryker. The integration was almost complete. At the time, that was in the news. So again, because that company already used that phone system, that would have sounded familiar. Undoubtedly, they would have heard that things were going through a transition. So the campaign became, hey, we need your help verifying information has migrated successfully. To ensure uninterrupted service, please complete these following steps. Give me your corporate credentials and update anything else that needs to be updated. At the bottom is concluded with IT service desk. Not help desk, they used a service desk. This is another example. This was one, a company was very involved in the local community, and they were big supporters of community initiatives. So in the beginning, I referenced this is a community initiative we launched last fall that they were proud of. Again, would sound familiar. Employees would likely recall hearing about that. So the campaign became, we're setting up a community resource center. We want to hear from you as to what causes are important so we know what's important to you. Just log in here and let us know. Next one, this one was aimed primarily at a sales department. Sales departments live and die by their numbers, and they're always looking for an edge to close the deal. So in this case, I bought the domain clientname.dev. And I said we're opening up access to a development site. You're going to see upcoming enhancements and upgrades to our services, but you got to keep it confidential until it all rolls out. But go in here and take a look and see what you think and let us know. And spoiler alert, it worked very well. Last one, this is one we knew the client was going through a SOC 2 audit based on OSINT. Hey, security is important here, and we're trying to stay compliant with our audit. So if you get this email, it means you haven't reviewed our updated incident response policy. Just go ahead and log in here, review it, take a look, and it has to be completed by the end of the week, mainly because that's when my test ends and I have to tally some numbers for my report. So thank you for your prompt attention to this matter. Sometimes with phishing emails, though, you're going to get caught up in corporate spam filters. And there are ways to disguise the links. Some of them are more effective than others, but this is one of my favorite things to do. If you look at these two things, at first glance, they look exactly the same. What's interesting is in internet browsers, if you go to the URL bar and you type in https:// the @ in google.com, the browser will autocorrect it for you and send you to google.com. It'll assume that you made a typo. Where that comes in handy for social engineering campaigns is that when you set up a domain, that any links you put in there are likely going to be reviewed by a spam filter, or they're going to be viewed. So you could have reputation problems, especially if you just bought the domain, for example. So what I do is, when I put the link in there, let's use this example, I put https:// the @ in google.com, but the @ I sync down to a 1-point font. It then becomes invisible on the screen. It looks like a piece of dust, and it's very difficult for it to detect. But when the spam filter looks at it, because it has the @ symbol in there, it thinks it's an email address, which is a very common thing in any kind of business correspondence. Spam filter doesn't care what the font size is. It sees the @ google.com, and I've beat a lot of high-end spam filters with this trick. If you're scoped for phishing, which is doing phone call phishing, I like to use spoof card to spoof phone numbers. If you have discovered phone numbers during your OSINT phase, the help desk, the main corporate number, vendor numbers, employees, whatever, you can be whoever you want to be. There's a lot of obvious ways to use this, but some of the uncommon things you can think of, again, to deliver a more professional test. If you're afraid that your emails are going to get caught in a spam filter, or you think you might be, you can actually call your targets and say, hey, we've had some complaints that emails have not gotten through. Can I send this to you real quick? Can you just make sure that you get it? That's going to tell you if your emails are getting through or not. And of course, if they are, just be ready to let fly right after that phone call with the rest of them. If your emails are blocked, you have somebody on the phone. See if you can get them to manually go to the site or do whatever it is that you're asking them to do. But my very favorite thing to do for phishing is Quick Assist on Windows. This is something I learned at Wild West Hacking Fest last year. Quick Assist is a very helpful utility that is standard on Windows. It is used so people can remote in and help troubleshoot the system. It also has a very fatal flaw. It does not care what domain the request is coming from. Best part of all You don't even have to get anybody's username or password to do it. These are screenshots of using Quick Assist. The one on the left is what you see. You help somebody. When you press that, it gives you a code. You give that code to the target, they type it in, and then you can remotely access their computer. One of my favorite pretexts for this is, hey, I got an alert that security updates are not installing on your system automatically. I just need 60 seconds to remote in and take a look real quick. Once I get in, I open a command prompt and type in who am I and IP config to prove that I was there and to show impact to the client. And then just get off the phone with, oh, everything looks fine. Let me keep doing some troubleshooting. But that can be a very tricky way to get remote access to somebody's system. Again, it's enabled by default, and most companies do not have this disabled. So again, as professionals, it's not just about getting the credentials or getting access to the system. As professionals doing a professional test, we should test and quantify business impact. That's what our clients pay for. That's how we can best help them. And especially if we have repeat clients running repeat tests, either yearly, quarterly, whenever, we can show documented improvement over time. So once we get these credentials, try them in the email provider, VPN, CRM, firewalls, anything that you found external facing during the OSINT part of your test. If you're also conducting an external penetration test at the same time, that's great. If you're not the engineer on that, work with them and see if you can get access to those systems. What you're trying to look for there is compensating technical controls. Do they have MFA on those? Do the applications recognize that logins are trying to come in from a new location? Conversely, if those protections aren't in place, what are you able to access? What files can you get? Can you get into their email inbox? Can you work your way to domain admin on the network? And I've seen it all. I'm going to share two extreme examples. I had a test a few weeks ago where I got multiple sets of credentials from a phishing campaign. And guess what? They didn't work anywhere on the external perimeter. I also had another test where we did get multiple sets of credentials. We used them to access the company VPN. There was no MFA involved. We were right there on the internal network. And in 30 minutes, we had domain admin. Now, if you're running a check the box test or a generic one, it's going to get written as both companies failed the test. But I will tell you, as somebody who did the deliverables to those companies, both of those were extremely different conversations because even though both failed the social engineering test, the impact on one was far greater than the other. So we're going to spend the last couple minutes talking about how to defend yourself and your organization from this. And here's my bottom line rule. Is the request normal? If something feels wrong to you, it is wrong. So just ask yourself, is the request normal? Is the email address or domain legitimate? If it's asking you to go to a website, go to a website that you know, not the one that I've put in those emails. Or if the phone call is suspicious, hang up and call the person back. Even if it's a friend, call the person or company back at a number that you know. Outbound phone calls can be spoofed, inbound ones cannot. And then cultivate a security culture. And here's the wrong way to do it. I saw a LinkedIn post recently where an organization started using a wall of shame to publicly show who failed the social engineering test. And don't do that. Just don't do that. If you punish people publicly or embarrass them, it's the absolute wrong thing to do. Do you know what that trains people to do? It trains them to hide their mistakes. And that can be detrimental to an organization. So cultivate open communication, have an environment where people feel free to say something. If you see something, say something kind of thing. Bonus points if they self-report. I had a client that did that. I got credentials through a phishing test. And while I was using them, they felt funny about it. They self-reported to the IT department. Other people had reported. That person's password was changed as I was trying to figure out the way past their MFA. And by then, it was a smaller company, word got around, and the campaign was dead. And that's exactly the kind of response you want to see to an attack. So train people to protect the business, and don't rely on tech tools alone, because tech tools alone are not going to cut it. Also have a plan to communicate through the entire organization if an attack is underway, or this is how we're going to communicate these kinds of requests. Make sure that everybody knows that. That will help prevent attacks and prevent further compromise if something is going on. And then do have effective technical controls in place that correspond and complement the human element. MFA on everything, for example, and make it interactive. There are usually two types. One is you have to type in a code that's sent, and the other one is you can just push a button on your phone to allow access. But remember how we talked about people and their subconscious just going on autopilot? Make the process as interactive as possible, because that will slow the thought process down and people can think, am I already logged in? Why is it asking me this? Because I'll tell you, as an attacker, I can tell if the prompt that is getting sent is a click to approve or they actually have to enter it. And if it's just click to approve, you know what I do? I send that request over and over and over and over until they get sick of their phone being chatty and they just want to shut it up and they approve the request. And you would be amazed how often that works. Then have a layered defense. There is no point in pouring all of your time and efforts into making sure nobody can be social engineered if you've got an SSH port exposed on the internet that can be accessed with root and password 123. Again, we've seen stuff like that. So have a defense in depth, have a training program, and test these processes and procedures repeatedly. Again, instill the automatic responses in your team that you want them to use, not the ones the attackers want them to use. And I know it's very fashionable to make layer 8 jokes and call people the weakest link in the organization, and I disagree with that. And I will tell you, if all it takes is an email or a phone call to topple the entire organization, the end users there are not the problem. Security posture is not tied to one single component. So if you found something here interesting and useful, share with other people, share it with your organization and your teams. I always say it takes a village, and we can all help each other to avoid succumbing to these attacks and to raise the bar on how we, as security professionals, conduct social engineering tests. And when we do it properly, everybody is going to win. Thank you for your time. Have a great day.